In this sixth session of the week 7, we will talk about globalization of sushi by Koreans, including the question of authenticity of ethnic food. As we learned, the Korean immigrants everywhere in the US, Canada, and Europe, and Oceania, and they are engaging in sushi bar business widely over the world. And that includes also the former Soviet Union as well. And as a matter of fact, the reason why I came to be interested in Korean-run sushi business in the world, that's because when I was living in Latvia more than 20 years ago, I was the only Asian, by the way, in the entire country of Latvia at that time, and I felt quite lonely. And one day, I found Asian restaurant. Now that was very luxurious looking Japanese restaurant. And I checked their menu and I was very much discouraged because the cheapest meal I could get there was about over $100 US. Now this Latvia was not a part of the European Union yet, and the country became independent only about 10 years before that time. And the reason why I was so surprised was, first of all, I was the only Asian, as far as I knew, in the entire country, and there was absolutely no Asian restaurant, no Chinese, nothing. However, first restaurant I saw at the city center looked extremely luxurious, and it was a very expensive restaurant. Nevertheless, I had an opportunity to dine at that restaurant. And it was a great shock, a series of shocks that day to me. First, there were two tall, nice-looking Latvians standing in front of the restaurant with a thick coat because it was winter, and they were guards of the restaurant. And when I entered into the restaurant, there were beautiful Japanese ladies in kimono. Not one of them, but all of them. About 7 or something, the beautiful Japanese ladies. Very tall, very beautiful, all in kimono. So I was puzzled. I thought I was the only Asian in Latvia at that time. Didn't know there were so many Asians in the city. Then I looked at the counter. The Japanese restaurant all have a counter, and behind the counter was a chef, stocky man, Japanese man. So it was an authentic Japanese restaurant. That's what I thought. And I was seated by the waiter, and while ordering food, I overheard the conversation that ladies were having to each other. And that was fluent Russian, not Japanese. And that was my another shock. I thought they were Japanese, but actually they were speaking in Russian, not even Latvian, amongst themselves. And then one moment, I also overheard the chef standing in front of the counter, talking with someone in the kitchen. And now that was Korean. The chef was shouting something in Korean to the kitchen. So now I was extremely confused. Wait a minute, this is a Japanese restaurant, but the beautiful ladies can't be Japanese because they were native speakers of Russian language. And then the chef was not Japanese because he was speaking with someone in the kitchen in Korean. Now everything I discovered, when I discovered everything, it was just a big shock. First of all, these ladies were not Japanese at all. They were ethnic Koreans brought from Kazakhstan all the way to Latvia to work as waitresses of the restaurant. And the chef was brought from Seoul together with his assistant inside of the kitchen. And another shock was the owner of this extremely luxurious Japanese restaurant in the middle of the city of Riga, the capital city of Latvia, was a Korean German. He's a Korean man from Germany. He already has a few restaurants, Japanese restaurants in Germany, and now he opened his restaurant in Latvia because Latvia would become a formal member of European Union in the few years of time. So that was my shock. And I came to be interested in this topic. And when I returned to America, I started to pay more attention. So anyway, let's going back to Korean-run Japanese restaurant in America. Now on the left and right, you see two chefs and two Japanese restaurants. And which one is Korean and one is authentic Japanese one and the other is a Korean one. So which one do you think is Korean and which one is the Japanese? The one clue is you first look at the name of the restaurant. Korean-owned Japanese restaurant typically has very Japanese-sounding popular names. Like, for example, I saw like a Tokyo or Narita, or like this one in Samurai, or Shogun, and so on. Now, these kind of names of Japanese restaurant, the ordinary Japanese people would not put as name of their restaurant. So, in this case, even though the chef here on your left, he's a Korean, he wears like a Japanese, the uniform and so on, that's a Korean one. And on the right is a Japanese one. Korean restaurants in North America, it's virtually impossible to know from outside if that is a really Korean one or Japanese one. But if you look at very carefully, actually it is not that difficult. First of all Korean-owned Japanese restaurants, they have a Japanese facade, including they have outside of their restaurant, they normally put chochin, which is red paper lanterns, as you see on the right side, at the top of right side, and that indicates this is a Japanese restaurant. And then Korean restaurant normally has a counter, which Japanese call, and that's counter style hall and kitchen. And the restaurant, somewhere in the restaurant, you see Japanese decorations such as ukiyo-e. Here in the image, you see one of the most famous ukiyo-e work by Hokusai during the early 19th century and late 18th century. And also, Japanese restaurant, the restaurant between kitchen and the hall, they put small curtain, which Japanese call noren. And noren normally carries the signs of the owner. Now, in Japanese tradition, this noren, the curtains, are very important. It's not just a small curtain because it has the insignia of the owner. Normally, when the restaurant owner in Japan has his apprentice who come and work for him. After many years, when his apprentice learned everything that the owner knows, then that's the time for the apprentice to leave, to open his own restaurant. And at that time, the owner would pull out the noren and carefully fold it and offer it to his apprentice, so that the apprentice would use the same noren at his restaurant, indicating that my learning came from my teacher. And for that reason, in Japanese tradition, noren is very well revered kind of thing. But of course, Korean owners, they don't know anything about it, mostly. And so for them, noren is just a small curtain, and that's the way how they treat noren. And also, like many shops these days, they put this manekineko, the cute Japanese, the cat, which calls fuku, or luck, or money. So Korean Japanese restaurant has everything, including uniforms. But then there are some Korean contents. As I said, the names of the restaurant. They typically named their restaurant with very Japanese sounding name, but not really suitable for restaurant, like a Shogun, Tokyo, or Samurai, and so on. And also, the Korean chefs learn very, very quickly. I showed you some of the training institutions, like Tokyo Sushi Academy in Los Angeles, Koreatown, and elsewhere. And so they learn all these things in a very short period of time, while in Japan, it is very, very long process. Especially the chefs who are standing behind the counter to meet their customers and make sushi there, they are veterans. They have been working probably at that restaurant more than at least 10 years, if not 20 years. So, but Koreans also, because they are not bound by, first of all, they are ignorant of the tradition that Japanese restaurant has. So, and that means they're free from that tradition, which means they can be very creative. While Japanese chefs, because they are bound by the tradition, they are restricted in inventing new items, which is very typical when non-ethnic groups engaged in someone else's food business. Now, I have these two menus, both from Los Angeles. One is from, both of them are decent restaurant. And one on the left, that's Sushi Shogun. And as I told you, just by looking at the name, I know that this is not Japanese. And on the right, meanwhile, that's Sushi Bar Kiyono. By the way, even Japanese don't know what Kiyono is. I will explain it later. There's two restaurants. One is near Koreatown in central Los Angeles. The other is Beverly Hills, very wealthy neighborhood, suburb in Los Angeles. And the Shogun, the menu, and the Kiyono menu, they are very similar. But the names are different, the Shogun versus Kiyono. So I asked the owner, and the owner was a Japanese lady, this elderly Japanese lady, and she said she married a Jewish American Jew when she was young, and now her husband passed away, and she continues running her restaurant. And so I asked her, what is a Kiyono there? And she said, oh, that's my mother's name. Kiyono was my mother's name. And I wanted to recreate her taste. in America, and that's why I put the name. So the naming of restaurant is totally different between Korean and Japanese. And as I said, this raises the question of authenticity. Now, Koreans are not Japanese, and they make sushi, and as I said, because they are free from the Japanese tradition, they tend to be more creative. And they invented many new sushi rolls, like including spicy tuna rolls. I'm not 100% sure, but all these spicy rolls were very much probably invented by Koreans rather than Japanese, because Japanese sushi is not terribly spicy at all, traditionally. So when Korean training institutions train so many chefs, Korean chefs, in a very short time period, normally within 3-4 weeks, while in Japanese training institutions, the same in California, like the one run by Mr. Toshi Sugiura, and the name of his institution is California Sushi Academy. And there, interestingly, he emphasized that Japanese food culture is not food itself, but it is more of spirit. Now that spirit over skills, Koreans learn only skills according to his judgment, but in my authentic Japanese school, we teach them spirit. Very interesting. So real Japanese chefs, they emphasize on spirit, but Korean training institution, they don't teach this spirit. So how do we interpret this authenticity question? As a matter of fact, the globalization of sushi is a process of Americanization of particular Japanese food. As it happened to pizza, even though it was Italian food originally, and in America, the Americans changed it and globalized it. And also so many food items that Europeans and Asians brought to America, including Chinese food, Chinese American food. In China, you never see those food. And Chinese don't know. Chinese don't have a fortune cookie. That's a very Americanized Chinese food, which became a part of American culinary life. And we can apply the same principle to sushi. Sushi in America is not Japanese food by now. It is a global food, totally Americanized. So Korean diaspora both expedited the globalization process of the famous Japanese food, sushi, and in that process, they transformed it by adding many new types and tastes. Now that's Americanization. And Koreans invented many new named makijushi and nigiri sushi, which didn't exist before. And actually some of them went back to Japan and it became popular. Like one example, even though it was not Koreans who invented the California roll developed in Little Tokyo in Los Angeles by Japanese. And today in Japanese sushi shop, you can find California roll. It is the same as Korean food, LA kalbi, invented in Los Angeles. Now in South Korean restaurants, you can find LA kalbi. It's the same thing. And Koreans are not bound by the strict Japanese culinary traditions. They invented many things, but they globalized and also localized the sushi. No doubt, in Japan, the serious chefs are concerned about the authenticity of their food, the traditional Japanese food, and they might be worried. However, in this super global society of today's world, authenticity in food seems to be a question of simple politics. In any regard, food is the most easily globalizable item. And today, so many non-Japanese people are making sushi throughout the whole world. And a famous food anthropologist, the Sydney, once said, any ethnic food that gains popularity in American society, they become American food. So, in America, any ethnic food that gain wide popularity, that become American food, and that is not ethnic food anymore. So, the same logic, the Japanese sushi today in America is totally different from Japanese sushi, and it is American food, I would say. And now I will summarize today's lecture. Sushi was widely known to most Americans by the mid-60s, but it really became popularized in American society by 1990s, especially when it became a supermarket food. So today, even supermarket in America and elsewhere, you can grab sushi. And behind this was the cultural changes that happened in 1960s and 70s in America, and after which there was a demand for sushi soared in American society, and Koreans were there when Japanese were not there, and they jumped into this business, and that's why Koreans today dominate this sushi industry. And also, as I mentioned, the infrastructure, the supply network of fresh fish was already set up by Unification Church from Japan in New York, and popularization of sushi was possible because of that basic infrastructure. And so Korean diaspora really globalized sushi. So I will conclude the week 7 lecture here, and thank you for your attention, and I will meet you again next week.